So with Fulgrim's return to the Warhammer 40k setting, how does the Demon Primarch of the Emperor's Children operate, and what are his motivations? Let's do a roundup of his current setting lore for Warhammer 40k. Hello and welcome back to Warspec Tactics, where today we're talking Demon Primarch Fulgrim, and in this video I thought I'd do a quick roundup of any new lore they've told us in the new Emperor's Children Codex. Primarchs and their actions in the 40k setting generally tend to attract a whole bunch of attention. They're just perhaps easier narrative things to focus on that people tend to be interested in, particularly given how much lore, thought and backstory has gone into them in the past over the Heresy series, and then for most of the returning ones they've generally been seldom seen figures in the current setting, and as a result all feeling rather mysterious until their current forms are brought into the light, and new miniatures have often come hand in hand with a bunch of new lore for them in one way or another. Now that Codex Emperor's Children is out and about, I was interested to take a look at any lore segments relating to him in the book. There was certainly a bunch of interesting stuff confirming how he operates currently, a lore section in the book about basically how he fights and what his attitudes are to his own legion and his enemies, plus a rather nice description of him taking to the field against the Ultramarines. It seems that current setting backstory will also be further developed in an upcoming novel as well, that one called Fulgrim the Perfect Son, and there's already been some teasers of that as well. If I do get a chance to read that, I'll try and do a summary of it on the channel. Before we jump into it though, I'll just give a quick shout out to the Warspec Tactics channel giveaway for April, which will be a very Fulgrim centred one. If you do want to get your hands on the shiny new Primarch model himself for Warhammer 40k, 10 channel viewers will get the option to, and this will be entering via the normal ways for the channel giveaways, either supporting on Patreon or entering via the Facebook post that appears on the first of the month. If you're interested in entering for this one, then I'll talk through how to do so at the end of the video, so feel free to check back for that. Jumping into Fulgrim's lore though, as mentioned he's a pretty well developed character at this point, featuring in a fairly big amount of the Heresy book series. As with the rest of the Primarchs, they were scattered throughout the galaxy, Fulgrim himself winding up on a resource-poor mining world called Chemos. While there he rose through the ranks, uniting the world and innovating their mining equipment to turn them from a dirt-poor world where every resource was put towards just scraping by, to a richer world where some luxury could be afforded, Fulgrim being very keen to re-establish the arts which he saw as an important part of human psyche. When he was reunited with the Emperor, he was sufficiently impressive to be given the Emperor's heraldry, and his legion being dubbed the Emperor's Children, something that furthered Fulgrim's drive towards perfection, trying to make his Astartes live up to honour the name of the Emperor that he bestowed on them. His initially small legion was put under Horus's overall command early on, and he was one of the earlier Primarchs to fall to the temptations of Horus and Chaos, between Horus's persuasions and the demonic influence of the Blade of the Lair. Fulgrim's prideful and perfectionist nature was easy prey for Slaanesh, and the influence of the Chaos deity spread throughout his legion, being driven to extremes of excess and debauchery. In the Isfahan system, loyalist elements of his legion were purged on Isfahan 3 with a great virus bomb ambush. At the Isfahan drop site massacre, he fought and slew his great friend Ferrus Manus, cutting off the head of the Primarch of the Iron Hands, who'd refused to join him in his fall towards Chaos. As the battles continued, Fulgrim became a great demon prince of Slaanesh, having 4 arms, a great serpentine body, and massive wings, leaving his mortal form behind somewhat when it was rather broken by Perturabo, and at one point lost interest in the battles of the Horus Heresy, getting up to Slaanesh demon depravity in the warp, and having to be dragged back to the fight by Wargear. He led the Emperor's Children in a great assault on the Saturnine Gate during the Siege of Terror, though it was ultimately thwarted, and for the most part the Emperor's Children generally found themselves with better things to do by inflicting all sorts of horrors of Slaanesh upon the human population of Terror, rather than being too focused on the serious business of winning the war. Post-Heresy and during the conflicts of the Great Scouring, Fulgrim laid another one of his brothers low, seemingly taking the life of Rabute Guilliman by besting him in single combat and cutting his throat with an envenomed blade, effectively rendering him on the edge of death until his resurrection by the Inari later on. For much of the next 10,000 years he retreated to a demon world that Fulgrim named Kallax, and had generally been thought to be amusing himself with all the hedonism and pleasures that Slaanesh can offer, recreating old battles to fight for the thrill of it, and basically without their Primarch, the Emperor's Children dissolved into smaller competing warbands, individual prideful warlords seeking to outdo each other without an overall command structure. In more recent times in the 40k timeline, prior to the Codex release, there'd only been a few times when it had been documented for Fulgrim to actually take some interest in the wider galaxy. On one occasion he was drawn back to Isfahan 3, where the loyalist Emperor's Children dreadnought Rylanor had laid a deadly trap for him, hitting Fulgrim with one of the great virus bombs that he used to wipe out much of his loyalist legion, destroying Fulgrim's physical form and causing him to need to rebuild it, though given he's now essentially an immortal demon Primarch, the most lasting blow might be to Fulgrim's pride. It's heavily hinted that he appeared as a mini-teaser as part of the Psychic Awakening campaign books. A mysterious great serpentine demon seems slaughtering guardsmen there. That was heavily thought to be Fulgrim at the time. And following Guilliman's revival, he possessed an arch-consul of Macragge from afar, and plans to try and corrupt Guilliman with a Chaos artifact. This was ultimately unsuccessful, but mainly seemed to be wanting to let his brother know that he was still around, and probably fully capable of laying him low once again. That's the majority of the previously established stuff, before all the new stuff that we've had for the Codex and the Emperor's Children released more widely. First up, the Codex featured a couple of bits of artwork of Fulgrim, picturing the Demon Primarch with weapons drawn in combat. He's largely fighting with the same style weapons in both pictures, a mysterious burning blade backed up by a whip and sword, great big horns, a white mane of hair, his wings and an armoured serpentine body. Miniature-wise, we also had his new model updaters. Here are the two Heresy versions of him from his early Heresy human form to his initial Demon Primarch transfiguration, and then a slightly more depraved and warped look for his 40k form, apparently Games Workshop having said that this is supposed to represent what's happened to him after he's basically been sitting in the energies of the warp for a really long time. Generally, his 40k miniature was pretty well received. It's certainly done in a slightly different style to the Heresy Era one, maybe 10 millennia worth of depravity having taken their toll. As I'll cycle back to, both of his swords are kind of interesting in their own way, and one of the more notable things that he's got going on is a great symbol of Slaanesh with a whole bunch of pinned back flesh. Seems that he's happy enough to be carrying around a great open wound, presumably for the sensation of the pain. He also has got a helmeted head option if he wants to bear one as well, as another option for Wargear that he can use. From the description of the Primarch from the Codex, it basically states that Fulgrim is excess and obsession given repulsive form, a sadist, Epicurean and artist of the grotesque. Describe all the things that we know about him: a great serpentine demon Primarch of Slaanesh. Apparently the wings that bear him aloft have the help of warp energy. As well as his weapons, he also lashes out with a clawed tail, another way to give his enemies the sting of death there. He's described as taking to battle with perfumed robes, polished finery, and the tinkling of multiple ampoules and bells, and when he's fighting in the lore, he's surrounded by a nimbus of sorcerer's illusions surrounding his writhing form in battle. So I guess as well as his physical presence, he'd have all sorts of psychic phenomena going off at the same time. For his character, the millennia in servitude of Slaanesh has apparently only made him more capricious, emotionally unstable and self-confident, and certainly bears all the hallmarks of his legion, constantly seeking sensation and getting bored easily if a great battle or experience doesn't live up to his expectations. As mentioned, the description of his weapons are pretty interesting. He takes up a variety of different weapons that he might fight with from one battle to another, certain things being manifested quite regularly, but often feeling the need to kill with different implements. He's often seen armed with shining polearms, sentient swords, flensing whips, or talons dripping with venom. Lots of his weapons are thought to be manifestations of his own will. As he's a demon entity, he can basically shape them as part of himself near enough. As well as those, he often takes up trophy weapons taken from worthy challengers, or swords, finery, or adornments fashioned from the essence of either vanquished foes or willing thralls. As mentioned though, other Emperor's Children have noticed that he often fights with a distinctive heavy-bladed broadsword, which in both bits of artwork seems to be blazing with an ethereal fire, and this is thought to be the fire blade forged by Primarch Ferrus Manus, even though that was believed to be destroyed in the great fight that they had when Fulgrim murdered his brother. His followers aren't sure whether or not it's the original that has been reforged, or some sort of manifestation of some sort of subconscious desire of Fulgrim. The lore in the Codex makes no mention of it, but the other blade that he's wielding looks quite a lot like an Eldari crone sword, which was thought to be in the keeping of the god Slaanesh within the warp, and if it's being wielded by Fulgrim might actually give the Inari some sort of chance to get their hands on it, though even if that's true then I'm sure that taking it from Fulgrim will be no easy feat. The book also makes clear Fulgrim's relationship with his legion, as was maybe kind of implied by Fulgrim going off to live on demon pleasure worlds for millennia at a time. He doesn't really care all that much about his legion compared with some of the other demon primarchs. He once nurtured his sons and wanted them to be the absolute pinnacle of space marines all around, but now apparently sees them as just one diversion amongst many. He remains the Gene-Star and lord of his traitor legion, but doesn't usually exert any sort of formal hierarchy over them or generally command them to any great grand plan, and spends long periods where he's neither seen nor heard from, searching for a sensation across real space, demon worlds and the warp. When he does choose to turn up alongside his sons, he often does so very sporadically. Sometimes it's answering a great ritual and summons if it pleases him to do so, sometimes he turns up entirely unlooked for, and depending on his mood, he might take command of the army, enact a masterful strategy to see the enemy broken on the perfection of his legion, or he might just disregard his sons entirely and throw himself at the enemy to vent his warp-born strength in single combat, butchering battle formations, armoured columns and heroes before him. Whenever he does choose to manifest in real space though, and take the fight to the enemy in earnest, it's usually bad news for anyone standing in the way, and potentially entire subsectors of the galaxy if he sticks around for long enough. According to the Codex, despite his very unreliable attention, his sons generally idolise him, most seeing him as a level of perfection that they will never achieve, relishing the opportunity to bear witness to his horrific artistry on the battlefield, and some entire warbands apparently dedicate their purpose to finding him, travelling the galaxy on a wave of murder, in the hope to attract his attention and chasing any sightings of him. In the Codex, aside from him being capricious and not really consistently interested in fighting alongside his legion, it doesn't really give any obvious answer to why he's been out of the setting for around 10,000 years or so. Maybe more implying that he has been active on the down low from time to time, maybe turning up to spread ruin in smaller scale conflicts, reports of him lost in the vastness of the galaxy. Maybe not doing anything of galactic significance is more due to his distractions and times away doing Slaanesh demon things, and enjoying his debauchery as much as he does, either leading his sons or fighting in combat. For foes that particularly hate him, the Iron Hands and the Ultramarines are apparently foremost amongst their number, holding Fulgrim in a special place of loathing for slaying or near slaying their Primarchs. There was some documentation of him fighting the Iron Hands in recent years as well, and while not said in the Codex, I'd certainly guess that the Eldari have no great love for him, particularly after coming into conflict with Eldrad Orthrun during the Horus Heresy. Finally, for the Codex lore updates, there's a couple of battle sequences described in the Codex, and one of them fully focuses on Fulgrim in action, turning up to a great battle between the Emperor's children and the Ultramarines. The sequence starts with what sounds like Fulgrim basically possessing and gaining access to real space via one of the Ultramarines' librarians, a Codex Era, being subject to the awful fate of Fulgrim tearing himself into reality from him, and then resculpting his flesh, armour, and everything else into his demon form, and apparently making his entrance onto the battlefield, bathing himself in a mist of great musk, causing nearby Ultramarines to spasm and grasp their rebreathers. Not a nice Primarch to stand next to, apparently. He surveys the battle and describes much of it as boring drudgery, being particularly dismayed to see the predictable battle patterns of the Ultramarines following their Codex Astartes, enjoying the antics of his more creative Emperor's children, though also seeing that they're basically losing the battle. Individual champions charging forward too greedily and recklessly, or trying to make a name for themselves or achieve personal glory, though at the expense of an overall winning strategy. Fulgrim decides to turn the tables for them, flying over Ultramarines' formations and dispatching a battery of artillery in no less than 6 heartbeats with his demon weapons. Interesting that they're called artillery tanks as opposed to whirlwinds. Probably doesn't mean too much, given that other units aren't really specifically called out by name, but maybe makes you think in the context of the whole Firstborn and Primaris updates thing, and generally sets about butchering formations of Ultramarines at lightning speed and precision. His demon form sees him fairly well protected against incoming firepower, shots often falling wide due to people targeting the phantasmal constructs and illusions that surround him as he fights. Other shots are burned away in a glowing nimbus around him, and some curve in mid-air. He seems to enjoy the pain of the ones that find their mark though, and decides to get a bit more of that lovely pain by sticking his hand in the open wounds and opening them up a bit, or rather disgusting there. He decides to circle around the battlefield, gradually getting closer to his main prey, seemingly an Ultramarines captain, slays his retinue one by one, duels the captain for a duel of 5 or 6 strokes and counterstrokes, initially holding back a bit, but then becoming bored with the whole thing, and stabbing the captain with all of his weapons at once. His blades are apparently laced with warp toxins that cause the captain to spasm as he dies. Following that, he weighs up whether or not he's going to stay or go, maybe taking his time over the remaining Ultramarines, or go off elsewhere in the galaxy to search new pleasures. I guess it's not going to be a great day for the best of the Imperial soldiers out there when a Demon Primarch turns up to fight on the other side unexpectedly. Finally, Games Workshop gave us some teasers as to Fulgrim's new novel. As mentioned, this one's called The Perfect Son by Jude Reed, and given that it's an entire book with him being the title character, it's probably going to give a fair few more insights versus the Codex, where he's only really focused on it in a couple of sections. Apparently the plot of this one is Fulgrim the Phoenician laying down a great challenge to his scattered sons. Can they break an Imperial fortress world under the command of the Black Templars, and earn the Primarch's and Slaanesh's favour while doing so? According to the preview though, the task isn't going to be quite that straightforward. Sounds like the Emperor's Children warbands are going to be going head to head with each other as well as the enemy, and it does more sound like Fulgrim's using his legion as a twisted form of entertainment, rather than really caring too much or not whether they achieve their goal particularly efficiently. In any case, I'm sure that'll delve into Fulgrim's twisted character a lot more over the course of it. Will be interesting if they drop any other hints and asides as to his relationship with the rest of the galaxy, or whether or not he's going to be brought into conflict with his returned brothers in the future. If time allows, I'll certainly try and read this one and report on it for a video, so feel free to subscribe if you'd like to see that. Look forward to hearing your takes on Fulgrim's lore in the current setting though. Is he more or less what you expected, or will he be due some sort of narrative appearance in an end edition campaign or something similar to what Angron had last time around? Certainly could be a fun one to wait and see there. Finally though, as mentioned earlier, I'll just cycle back to the channel giveaway for April, and as mentioned this one will be for 10 winners to get a copy of Demon Primarch Fulgrim himself, so if you do happen to have another big fancy model in your sights, you can swap him out for any other single plastic Warhammer 40k kit, maybe one of the other Demon Primarchs or a Super Heavy. As per usual with the channel giveaways, there will be 2 equal ways to enter, both of them links down in the video description. Firstly, you can either support the channel on Patreon for any amount, that gets you automatic entry into the giveaways each month, as well as being the main thing that helps to support the channel and videos coming out on Auspex Tactics. Alternatively though, you can enter completely for free via supporting the channel via social media and boosting the algorithms. To do that, you do these 3 things. Subscribe to the YouTube channel here, like the Facebook page that's linked down in the video description, and then to actually enter the draw on Facebook, the post appears on the 1st of April, that comes out at midnight UK time. And if you respond to that with a photo of any 40k mini or imagery along with your name and the date handwritten on the same photo, then that gets you entry. The picture bit's just to deter Facebook bots and spammers and make sure prizes go to real people. After 24 hours of that one going live, I lock the post and do the draw. I'll be picking out the 10 winners with a random number generator, and then the results get announced on the channel update video on YouTube around the 4th of April. The models will be posted out once I've received my orders of them. Hopefully it won't be too long until Games Workshop has the full Emperor's Children release wave go live. In any case, feel free to check out the links in the video description if you'd like to enter for that, the Patreon and the Facebook page, and there'll be further giveaways of a similar sort of size and scope each and every month. I'll leave this one there for now though. Feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics if you'd like to see more like this. I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming, and I'm sure I'll have a few more for the Emperor's Children in the not too distant future. As mentioned, if you have been enjoying the videos, then feel free to check out the Patreon page below if you'd like to help support. Channel patrons do get a few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways. A massive thank you to anyone supporting there, and a huge thank you for people watching in general. I'll hope to see you guys next time.